old St Austell. Here we are outside St Austell Church, which is the oldest building in St Austell. And here on the wall, just outside the church, is a plaque to the memory of Mary Harris. She died in 1734. Apparently she drowned. Just down the road is Duke Street, which locals say it was once named Ducking Street, where they found ducking posts, which was used for ducking witches and wise women. I'm off to Boscastle to find out more about the witches of Cornwall. See you there. Obviously, I'll be going in my Ford Focus Hocus Pocus. So I have come here to the Museum of Witchcraft in Boscastle to find out if I am really surrounded by witches. Let's have a look inside. What's the chances of a ducking stool in St Austell in the 1700s?
Well, ducking stools were used generally to deal with women who were rather argumentative and a bit feisty and got out of line. And so they were stools that were used, it was used as a kind of punishment, that a woman would be ducked in a pond or a river using a ducking stool. Witches were ducked, but not actually using ducking stools. One of the tests for witchcraft was that the witch would be tied up and thrown into a river or pond, usually with a rope attached so that she could be pulled out again. The idea was that if she sunk, she was innocent and she wasn't actually a witch. But if she floated, the water had rejected her, and that proved that she was a witch. And unfortunately, of course, a lot of quite innocent people were drowned. You know, they were thrown into the water by mobs suspected of being witch, and they couldn't really win because if they sunk, they were often left to drown anyway, and if they floated, that was proof that they were a witch.
We actually started in the Isle of Man 61 years ago, and we moved here 51 years ago.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, so we've been going a long time.
Bit of a cheesy question. Has Harry Potter had any influence on the witchcraft industry?
We make a token reference to Harry Potter, but interestingly enough, there's a serious side to Harry Potter there. J.K. Rowling obviously did her research, and things like the mandrakes. We've got a lovely collection of mandrakes here, and they've become really popular since Harry Potter books came out. And we've got other things. We've got a bezoar stone, which is a tiny little stone which you find in the stomach of a goat. And it's always been used medicinally as an anti-poison charm. And we've got one of those here, and I noticed that in Harry Potter they mentioned the bezoar stone.
Something else mentioned in the Harry Potter books is the mandrake roots, a very ancient magical plant. In fact, a powerful narcotic drug with hallucinogenic properties, which was used often in magical incenses. But also the mandrake roots themselves were carried as good luck charms, particularly ones that resembled human beings, as the root often takes a human-like form, but also quite often people would make them look more like humans. They would dig the roots up and tie them with thread and then rebury them to get them to grow into a shape that looked like a human being.
While we're here in the museum, maybe you could show us some of the Cornish witchcraft artefacts you have here.
This is a display of curses, one here from Liscard. This was found in a filing cabinet in a local government office building in 1948. It shows a lady secretary. It's a photograph with pins stuck into it. And it's really very evocative of the kind of tensions that were generated in an office environment. I'm sure many people today might identify with that kind of thing.
There's a lot of witchcraft still going on in Cornwall, and a lot of it might not be called witchcraft. A lot of the people that are I'm thinking the charmers, the pellers, the people that maybe the local farmers will go to cure their ringworm. Now that's magic, that's witchcraft. These charmers, that's a form of witchcraft. So yes, it's still alive and well.
Anything in the news lately of witchcraft in Cornwall?
All sorts been going on, really. You'll regularly see features on the local charmers. We're in the news an awful lot. We're getting more and more popular over the years, and in fact we're TripAdvisor now rate us as the most popular museum in Cornwall. So.
The most important kind of magic was healing magic. In the past, doctors were very expensive and people simply couldn't afford their fees, so they would go to the local wise woman or cunning man to be healed. And here we have a jug that was used by the Bodmin wise woman Nell Parsons, and she used to use that to collect water from Scarlet's Well, the holy well in Bodmin, for making her healing potions.
Well, it came to Cornwall 51 years ago, a long time ago now, and it came here because of the ongoing traditions. It's a lovely tradition in Boscastle that the witches used to sell the wind to sailors in a knotted rope. They'd go up onto the cliffs up on the top here, and they'd take a bit of rope and they'd tie 3 knots in it as the wind blew, and they'd seal the wind in those knots. And then they'd sell the knotted rope to the sailors, and when they wanted some wind they would untie a knot and up would come a nice breeze and away they would sail.
This is one of the most popular exhibits in the museum. This is Cecil Williamson's scrying mirror, a magic mirror that he used for divination, and instead of being made of silvered glass like a conventional mirror, it's made of black glass. And so you gaze through it like you would a crystal ball and see visions that will answer your questions, which is another very important aspect of magic. People needed help with solving their problems, finding answers to their questions, and wise women and cunning folk would use mirrors to do that.
Cecil Williamson, the original curator of the museum, was a practising witch.
Certainly so it would seem. This mirror was actually found after his death, set up on an easel in his library, where he had obviously been using it.
You can go back as long as you want, you will always find magic in Cornwall.
Okay.
You can go back hundreds and hundreds of years, Cornwall and magic.
Back to the stones.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then, you can drive into Boscastle and feel the magic. You don't have to be, you don't have to understand these things. It's there. And I think the fact that we're a little bit remote down here, I think meant that things didn't change quite that fast, and that some of these practices continued and continue.
Yeah.
I know farmers here that will consult the local charmer for ringworm, and they're quite matter of fact about it. It's just something they do, and it works.
When Cecil Williamson moved here to Cornwall, he found this dog's heart with pins stuck in it in his garden. And it's a very ancient form of counter magic against witchcraft. If somebody believed that an animal had died because someone had put a curse on it, then they would use the heart from the dead animal and stick pins in it as a way of reversing the curse and sending the curse back against the witch. And obviously, because Cecil had brought the Witchcraft Museum here, people suspected him of being a witch himself. Magic stones were also very important in healing, and geodes are obvious symbols of sexuality and fertility. This is the funny stone that was used by Joan, a travelling woman who did seasonal work here in Cornwall, and she would use that for healing and fertility magic. Granny Boswell is very famous late 19th and early 20th century Cornish wise woman. One of the most interesting stories about her is that during the 1906 general election, she made a Tory campaigner's car break down by putting a curse on it. Like many wise women, she was respected and relied on for help by local people, but also regarded with a certain amount of unease and even fear. But after her death, hundreds of people turned out to attend her funeral. She was so well known and respected. Another well-known Cornish wise woman is Tammy Blee, and we have a picture here which is actually of a portrait of her, and it's really quite interesting that a wise woman should have been so prosperous and respectable that she actually had her portrait painted. One interesting story about Tammy Blee is that a local farmer had had a number of things stolen from him, and he wanted to know who the thief was. and Tammy B told him to take the farmyard cockerel and hide the cockerel under a red cloth and get the people he suspected of stealing goods to each touch the cloth in turn, and then when the person who was guilty touched the cloth, the cockerel crowed, and that was how the farmer discovered who was the person who had stolen his property.
I understand that the most popular exhibit up till fairly recently was the body of Joan Wytte.
Well, I don't know about the most popular exhibit, but it was an exhibit that we felt uncomfortable with. Joan Wytte was a wise woman, a peller, a charmer that lived in Bodmin, and she was a little bit of a... she got a reputation as a troublemaker, fighting fairy woman they called her. And she actually died in Bodmin jail. She'd been arrested for a misdemeanour and she died in jail. And as often happened back then, she wasn't buried. Her body was sold, I think it was to the Royal College of Surgeons. So it's a strange story, but her skeleton got passed around and ended up on display here in this museum. And we felt uncomfortable with it. We didn't like the children laughing and poking, and so we decided, after a lot of consideration, we decided to bury her.
She was all wired up with wires.
Joan?
The skeleton, you know,
Yes,
was all fixed up with wires, and so we have photographs here of Graham removing the wires and then putting the bones in a basket full of wool before she was buried in Minster Wood.
And she's actually buried near Minster Church, and she's got a little plaque there. When we buried her, we made 3 headstones up. They're only small. One of them we buried with her, so if ever she's dug up, or if anybody discovers her by mistake, they'll find a headstone and know who she is. The other one we put near where we buried her, so that if ever it's so that people have got somewhere where they can remember her and other persecuted people and witches. And the third one is on display here in the museum. If you go to Minster Church,
yes,
there's a little gate that leads off into a path in the woods, and Joan's headstone is just outside the church side, so it's just through the gate on the right hand side, and it's just tucked away, and you'll often find flowers left there. I think it's a lovely little place to go and remember the persecuted of the world.
Divination was another very important part of magic. People wanting solutions to their problems, answers to their questions, and we have here a rather beautiful tambourine. Sadly, it was damaged in the 2004 flood, but this was used by Kate the Gull Turner, a wise woman of Penryn, and she placed shells on the tambourine, and then she would shake the tambourine and pat it with her hand, and the pattern that the shells formed would be used for divination and fortune telling. Another Cornish wise woman, Nancy of Newlyn, used these fossils, which are known as belemnites, and she would throw them on the ground, and the patterns that they formed would be used for fortune telling. Sailors, because of the dangerous nature of their lives, often carried good luck charms of one kind or another. A good example is the caul, which is a membrane that is sometimes found on a baby when they're born, and it was believed that this would protect from drowning, and so sailors used to carry a caul in case they were shipwrecked, and people whose children were born with a caul over their heads could sell them for really quite high prices to sailors. Magic is something that really fascinates people, and the basic principle of magic is that there is some kind of creative energy that is in everything, and it sort of pervades and connects everything, and it's something that you can draw on to heal people and to get solutions to your problems. In the past, magic was something that was really important to ordinary people. It was something that empowered them and helped them to cope with their difficult and challenging lives. But today people are still fascinated with it. And I think there is probably more and more interest in magic now, and there's a lot of interest in the history of magic because people are interested in the daily lives of our ancestors. They realise that actually that can be just as interesting as the wars and the politics. But also, people want to find a way of reconnecting with the natural world. And there is a feeling that magic is one of the ways that people used to do that in the past. Magic was about herbs and stones and fairies, the spirits of the natural world. And there is something about that people feel is lacking in our lives today often, that we don't have that connection with the natural world that perhaps people had then. And I think that's one of the reasons why people are fascinated by it.
I've thoroughly enjoyed researching my time with the witch fraternity here in Cornwall. I hope I haven't rattled the bones of Joan Wytte too much, or indeed Mary Harris. I wouldn't want them to put a spell on me and turn me into a skeleton. See you